You get a title change, and you get a title change, and you get a title change. I'm John Rithlin with a retro review of TNA Bound for Glory 2006, taking place in Plymouth, Michigan, but they say Detroit, Michigan. I'm sure it's like a city right outside Detroit, and don't really know my Michigan geography all that well. But this was the first TNA pay-per-view, the 3-hour special that was on the road, and it was a pretty big deal. They had a pretty hot crowd for it. It was probably 3,000-4,000 people, but still, a very hot crowd can help a show that at times is average seem even bigger than it actually is, and this felt like a pretty big deal. And I also wanted to see if the show had aged pretty well, and by and large it has. Now, not every single thing is great, and there were some things that I hated at the time that I still hate now, but there were way more positives than there were negatives. So, it did have a big show feel to it, the pyro and everything, the staging was cool. Crowd had their signs out and everything, and they were ready for a packed card. We started with, and forgive me, this is going to be a bit long-winded, the Kevin Nash Open Invitational X Division Gauntlet Battle Royal for Bound for Glory. That's actually the whole thing that they said. And he joins commentary for this. This is when Kevin Nash was working with Johnny Devine, Alex Shelley, the Paparazzi Productions, and soon would work with Jay Lethal to do the whole Black Machismo thing. He does a really good impression of Randy Savage and Ric Flair. And you know what? I'm not going to say that other stuff about Lethal. You know what the stuff is. But honestly, Nash did provide some good comedy for the X Division. And actually, I think with his star power, did help for the most part. Now, this had 16 participants. And I say participants and not just men because there was a woman involved. We have Austin Starr, a.k.a. Austin Aries, who was like, superstar Billy Graham, like A Star Is Born, but with 2 R's for maximum coolness. And he took on Sanjay Dutt to start off, and then every 60 seconds thereafter, somebody would come in, and then when it got down to the final 2, like a typical TNA gauntlet, it would end pinfall or submission. I also know it's called Impact Wrestling, but it was called TNA at the time, so that's what I'm going to call it. So they're the first 2, and I'm just going to go through the participants. This was a typical battle royal, but at least had a good pace to it. Maverick Matt, aka Matt Bentley, then Jay Lethal's in at 4, A1, not the barbecue sauce, but of Team Canada. Zach Gowen, Kazarian, and Sanjay got eliminated first. And then we have Sorelda, who I vaguely remember, but it's been a while since I've watched this era of TNA, all the way through. So I vaguely remember her. I remember her being a pretty big powerhouse, but she didn't last very long. Then you had Shark Boy come in, you had Alex Shelley come in, do a huge pop because he was from Detroit, Michigan, or is from Detroit, Michigan. And then D-Ray 3000 because him and Shark Boy used to team up on some of the older, TNA Impact Wrestling shows. And then Johnny Devine. So him and Alex Shelley did tag teaming stuff. Elix Skipper, who got a pretty big pop. And I always wonder what happened to Elix Skipper. Short Sleeve Samson, easy for me to say. He was Slick Johnson's little midget buddy. And even Slick Johnson got involved later. Norman Smiley was also there doing the wiggle stuff, the big wiggle. And then he got eliminated pretty quickly. And then Petey Williams was the final participant. And Slick Johnson got tossed out pretty damn quickly. And then a Destroyer to Jay Lethal, which actually, that's back when the Canadian Destroyer actually fucking meant something. And then it's down to Lethal and Starr. And then soon after, it's, Austin Starr gained the victory with the Brainbuster. And then he's giving him a trophy, celebrating with him. Alex Shelley's looking all dejected and everything. Like, no, Papa, why won't you love me? No, I don't know why the hell he was so dejected. Yeah, Austin did not last very long in this run in Impact. Had a lot of runs where he just would suddenly leave because he wasn't happy with things. It's almost like the guy was a fucking malcontent and a fucking, piece of shit to deal with backstage. Fantastic talent in the goddamn ring. I will say that much about Austin Starr, Aries, the known. He's not very smart. If you've ever seen his social media, he's not very smart. Great in the ring, though. This was a fine opener, and then we get to the Naturals with Shane Douglas, who had earned a title shot recently, but they were going to compete in this 4-way and had to win it, to keep their momentum for some reason. The James Gang, BG James and Kip James, Road Dogg and Billy Gunn, because they were taking shots at Vince McMahon and Shawn and Triple H and stuff like that, and then would suddenly go back and work for them, especially Road Dogg. Of course he would suck up and be an idiot, not understand how, racism and other things work and everything, but Road Dogg's always been an idiot. Moving on, AMW, America's Most Wanted, not with Gail Kim because Gail Kim got laid out when Hernandez hit her with a border toss, picked her up and copped a feel on her, and then did that, if you checked out the video. Whether inadvertent or not, still kind of, yeah. And they took on Team 3D as well. So it's a 4-way tag match, and the match was what it was. It wasn't great. It was showcasing some great teams in TNA, but it wasn't really a great showcase of what the skills of the various teams could be. Like, if that makes any sense. Like, they weren't allowed to really do too much. They were allowed to do some spots and then get in and do all their stuff. And BG James does the same typical shit in the beginning with the promo and everything, and then, typical work. He was never very good in the ring. And then we get a 3D, to Douglas for 3. I mean, it does dissolve into a brawl outside for a little bit and no count, but it's a 4-way match. Who the fuck are you gonna count out? It's not elimination. So Andy Douglas, not Shane Douglas, got pinned, and then Shane Douglas is coming down yelling at Douglas and Stevens. Man, it's Douglasception right here. So he's yelling at the Naturals, like, what the hell are you doing? And that was something. And then we get Jake Roberts surprising Borash, who was trying to talk to Samoa Joe after Samoa Joe and Kurt Angle had gotten in their brief altercation on a recent Impact. And he talks about, hey, if you hold a snake too long and you give it some love, it can grow. Gross. He's channeling his Heroes of Wrestling days. So we then get Raven versus Samoa Joe versus Abyss versus Brother Runt, a.k.a. Spike Dudley, in a very brief run in TNA before he retired. Monsters Ball match, special guest referee, Jake Roberts. They eliminated the whole thing, of previous Monsters Balls where they were locked in isolation for 24 hours and then were released and were going to kill each other, which I thought was just overdone because nobody fucking bought the fact that they were locked in isolation. That was probably a Russo thing, or just, somebody wanting to overbook shit. So it was a Russo thing. It was the usual mess. There were weapons, there was stuff, Brother Run took a spill off of the stage. Jake Roberts kind of looked like he was just there. Didn't look like he really knew where he was at. He probably didn't at the time. He was still better rep than Steve Mongo McMichael was at Bound for Glory 2008. Fucking hell, that was ridiculous. We get, they missed a live shot of Abyss diving on Brother Runt on the stage, which was ridiculous. It's just a shot of Jake Roberts reacting, which is absolutely hilarious. And then we get the tack bag. We get Raven, Jake, and Abyss having a brief altercation because Jake gets his sack out. Have fun on seeing that. And then Abyss, gets is sent into attacks when he's facing down and everything and selling. And then Samoa Joe hits senton, does that. And then Coquina Clutch, Raven with a chair, DDT to Raven because Raven had attacked Jake Roberts earlier. And then Muscle Buster to Raven for 3. And then Jake put his snake all over Raven, draping his snake all over him. Have fun on seeing that as well. Typical mess, not really that great. What also wasn't great was Larry Zbyszko versus Eric Young. Loser gets fired. Larry Zbyszko had gotten drunk with power, especially since, getting Raven out of the company seemingly. And then Jim Cornette was a director of authority. Don't worry, he factors into this show as well. And Larry Zbyszko, drunk with power, all this was targeting Eric Young. Eric Young had been fired, but had been brought back, and if he could beat Larry Zbyszko, the disheveled guy that he was at this point, he would get his job back. Well, he did. It was comedy. He hit him with a loaded punch when the ref didn't see Larry Zbyszko bring stuff in, and he was down. Loaded punch, 1, 2, 3. Eric Young keeps his job. Larry Zbyszko is gone. Thank fuck. And then Jim Cornette shows up, and his voice was shot because he was sick. He was really sick. I mean, this was not typical Jim Cornette you see. And yes, I'm a fan of Jim Cornette's podcast, even though I don't always agree with his views. Just say that right now. And he's talking about the Joe Angle situation. And thankfully, Angle's out there to save the goddamn thing, because Cornette said if Joe interfered in the main event, he's gone. Here's Kurt basically saying, I wasn't going to allow, Samoa Joe to punk me out and everything. If he wants to brawl, we can brawl. They have a brawl, pull apart and everything a few times, done pretty damn well to hype up their match at Genesis 2006, a month later. And then we get Senshi, a.k.a. Loki, a.k.a. Mr. Anti-Masker and all that and everything. And he's a fucking goddamn idiot. Have you seen what the fuck he said? Him and Aries should form a tag team of, fucking idiots of 2020. And then he took on Chris Sabin, exhibition title match. Good clash of styles. Senshi, no doubt, very good in the ring, especially at this point. Sabin, very good as well, especially pre, so many knee injuries. He suffered one torn ACL in 2011, then suffered another, I think, in 2012. And then was finally able to come back, and he's still in really good shape. It's just, oh God. I think I remember hearing a story that one of the ACLs actually came from a cadaver's leg. If true, gross. But hey, he's back wrestling. So it's good high flying, good strikes, submissions. Sabin hits a cradle shot, gets a 2. Warriors way stomp off the top. But Senshi delays just long enough So it's believable that Sabin kicks out. And then eventually, the dreaded roll-up, 1, 2, 3, and Chris Sabin gets the victory. Let's move on from this. Not bad. I mean, it was first of 3 title changes, so it was what it was. Christian Cage versus Rhino, 8-mile street fight. Rhino runs from the crowd, gets down the stairs, gets in the ring, does his pyro going off, and then goes backstage. Christian's already backstage. So why the hell didn't you just start it backstage? I just don't understand that. They had like a minute and a half to the show when they didn't need to. They go outside to battle among a bunch of cars and everything, slamming on the car hoods, that kind of stuff, very safely so they don't damage anything. Eventually they get back in the arena. It's a minor league hockey arena. He puts Christian on a Zamboni, Rhino does, and drives him to the ring. They battle and everything, battle on the stage. Do some good, weapon stuff. There's this weird, stupid, plasticky lamp post that they use for a weapon shot and almost pulls one of the cords out, the tech cords, which is kind of ridiculous. Kind of ridiculous they set it up like that. It's like the Fire Russo thing. Oh, wait, no, that was Destination X 2007, the Last Rites match. Oh, dear. This match actually was pretty personal because Rhino had been betrayed by Christian Cage, and Christian Cage was bound, determined to end his friendship with his friend. Which would be weird to end a friendship with your enemy. But he's beating him up and everything, and this would actually lead to an even better cage match on Impact a little bit later, which would be Christian winning despite getting basically bloodied up and being speared through the door, and he would win, but Rhino would look more the victor. They had a pretty good feud though, and Rhino's bleeding. We get a ladder splash. We get a straight jacket on temporarily, very temporarily. I think it was like 30 seconds. Pile driver through a table by Rhino. It looks like he's going to win, but then he's getting his head bashed in. They're doing the concussion stuff. Oh no, he suffered too many head injuries. We get a gore into the table. He just goes through the table. And then he's buried under chairs, a ladder, debris, and a chair smashed on him multiple times. And then Christian gets the victory. And that was it right there. So now we got 2 more matches. This is a pretty good match, though. I encourage you guys to check this one out. It's brief. I think it's like 10 minutes. It does not feel like it lasts very long, but it's pretty good for what it is. They pack a lot of stuff in here. And normally I'm not a fan of hardcore matches, but this one was pretty good. Announcers kill time while the cage is set up. We get LAX, Homicide, and Hernandez. The good LAX. Actually the great LAX, because the good LAX was Santana and Ortiz. They actually are a pretty good team. Conan's also there, and they take on AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels. NWA Tag Team Championship match in the 6 Sides of Steel. Pretty violent. We even get a fork involved at one point. Abdullah the Butcher smiles as he, ignores the fact that he knew that Bruiser Brody got murdered and he still went down to Puerto Rico and didn't say anything because he's a fucking piece of shit and he deserves to burn in hell for knowingly covering up a murder. He fucking knew it. Watch the Dark Side of the Ring episode on Bruiser Brody. Abdullah the Butcher looks like a goddamn liar and a goddamn piece of shit. Not that he didn't look like a piece of shit in the ring anyway, because he couldn't fucking wrestle and he couldn't fucking do anything. He was a fucking abhorrent human being. But moving on, back to this match. There's blood, there's some cage bumps, there's a Tower of Doom spot, and then Styles just says, fuck it, I'm diving on Hernandez, death be damned, and he dives on him. And then Hernandez does a dive later and misses. That's a big man to be doing a dive. And eventually, everybody gets separated. Gringo Killer 2, AJ Styles from Homicide, 1, 2, 3, new NWA Tag Team Champions. And then they briefly beat them up afterwards. LAX beats up Styles and Daniels to cement the title change and the split of Styles and Daniels as a team. And then announcers kill more time. We get Jeff Jarrett versus Sting, NWA title match. Kurt is a special guest enforcer. Sting was in better shape than he'd been in a number of years. Everybody put that over. And he really was in great shape. I mean, he tanned. He'd lost some weight. He toned up. And even for a guy that was approaching 50, it's pretty goddamn. I think he was 45 at this time. Or something. I know he was... Actually, he might have been close. He was close. He was, at least in his mid-40s. Still pretty damn impressive. Pretty damn good stuff. And a typical match. Wasn't great. Kurt made sure it was fair by taking away weapons from either guy, a chair, a bat, whatever it was. But eventually, Jarrett gets the acoustic equalizer, as WCW 2000 used to say, and, hit Sting over the head with the guitar. He no-sells it, gets a Scorpion on, Scorpion Deathlock that is, and gets a victory in the tap-out. And the new NWA champion, Sting, after winning the title at Great American Bash 1990, he wins the NWA title at Bound for Glory 2006. So a 16-year age difference. That's what I was trying to say. And that's a pretty long stretch from, between NWA championship runs. And the main reason that he didn't win the NWA title again in WCW is because by the time he could have won it, they had pulled away from the NWA. So it was what it was, and it was good stuff. I enjoyed this show. Not everything was perfect, but definitely a show that does showcase how well Impact Wrestling TNA could put together a pretty good pay-per-view, and the big matches definitely delivered. So agree, disagree with what I said? Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.